Section 5. Unit 2, Other Institutional Sources of Funds. Lesson 1, Real Estate Trusts. Lesson 2, Real Estate Bonds. Lesson 3, Foreign Lenders and Investors. Lesson 4, Mutual Savings Banks and Savings Associations. Mutual Savings Banks, Quick Facts. Mutual savings banks are primarily concentrated along the East Coast and were created to serve workers during the industrial expansion of the mid-19th century. With an organization similar to credit unions, depositors in mutual savings banks are owners, and the boards of directors are made up of local business people. Mutual savings banks have individual charters that vary from state to state and set limitations on lending activities, such as property types and the percentage of funds that may be used. Investments made by mutual savings banks are on the conservative side. Funds from those investments help finance long-term real estate loans backed by mortgages. More than 70% of the assets of a mutual savings bank come from savings accounts. These banks prefer to keep mortgage lending local so they can closely monitor the loans. When a mutual savings bank invests outside of its geographic area, it's by necessity, and mostly occurs when working with mortgage bankers. In spite of the limits imposed by geography and custom, mostly residential deals, mutual savings banks provide important funding for real estate loans in their local markets. How bonds work. The two primary bond types are municipal and corporate. Investors may use bonds in real estate financing as collateral for a loan. By issuing bonds, through an investment company, in order to gain cash for an investment. Investors may also choose to invest in a bond that's used to finance a real estate development project. Municipal bonds. Municipal bonds are bonds issued by a city, county, or state to fund government projects, such as road improvements, school renovations, and other infrastructure projects. Municipal bonds are considered a debt instrument, because when an investor purchases a bond, it's essentially a loan to the authority that issued the bond, for which the authority promises to pay interest. This interest is called the coupon rate because, back in the day, an actual coupon was attached to the bond certificate. Investors used the coupon when they wanted to collect the interest. Interest paid out is almost always exempt from taxes at the local, state, and federal level. At the bond's maturity, the face value of the bond is then repaid to the investor. Because the bonds are low risk, being backed by the municipality that issued them, they generally pay a correspondingly low interest rate. Some municipal bonds are callable, meaning the issuing authority may pay them off early. When this happens, it reduces the amount of interest rate the investor will earn. Corporate bonds. Corporate bonds, which may be either secured or unsecured, are typically issued when a business needs ready cash for capital improvements, development, or expansion. Similar to municipal bonds, the bonds are issued at face value and earn interest over the holding period, after which the investor receives the face value of the bond. Coupon rate is also the term for interest in corporate bonds. Secured corporate bonds. Secured bonds are backed by a corporate asset, which provides collateral that the bond purchasers can make a claim against in the event of a default. Mortgage bonds are secured by a lien on the property owned by the issuing corporation. Collateral trust bonds are secured by the corporation's investments in other entities, i.e., stocks and bonds in other companies. Because secured corporate bonds aren't backed by a governmental entity, they usually pay a higher yield than municipal bonds do. Also, corporate bonds don't offer the same tax advantages as municipal bonds, so the interest paid is taxable. Unsecured corporate bonds. Unsecured corporate bonds, also called debentures, aren't backed by specific collateral, but by the credit of the issuer. With their higher risk, investors usually realize a higher yield than with secured corporate bonds. Coupon bonds. Coupon bonds, aka bearer bonds, aren't as popular as they once were, and you'll soon see why. They're so named because coupon originally referred to an actual physical coupon that was detachable from the bond certificate itself. Since these types of bonds aren't registered, ownership was proven by possession of the bond certificate and coupon. As stated above, when the bondholder wanted to collect the interest payment, the coupon was removed and presented to the bond issuer. Although some bearer bonds are still around, they've been phased out for two reasons. The first reason is obvious: if the bond certificate is lost, it's impossible to recoup one's investment. The second reason is because they're not registered. Bearer bonds were a great place for the notorious and nefarious to launder their funds. Living and testamentary trust basics. Living and testamentary trusts. A living trust is created during a person's lifetime and is often used when minor children are involved. The property may be placed within the trust for their use in their lifetime or when they reach the age determined by the person who creates the trust. In the meantime, the trustee will manage it for them according to the terms of the trust. A living trust differs from a living will in that a living trust is established to convey property, whereas a living will is created to dictate terms of care in the event the trustmaker becomes incapacitated. A living trust can save both time and money in the long run because, unlike a testamentary trust, a living trust avoids probate, which can take up to a year and generally costs 5 to 10% of an estate. A testamentary trust is created according to the terms of the will of a deceased person. Unlike living trusts, testamentary trusts do not avoid probate, which means that the beneficiaries are responsible for the cost of administering a testamentary trust. Land trust basics. One form of trust is a land trust, which is similar to other trusts except that it is formed specifically to hold real estate. Real property is the only asset within the trust. Usually the person who establishes the trustor, is also the beneficiary. The beneficiary continues to have ownership rights to the property, so it can still be occupied, rented, developed, or sold. Land trusts generally continue for a specified term, such as 10, 20, or 30 years. At the end of the term, the trustee can extend the term or sell the land and provide the proceeds to the beneficiary. There are three primary types of land trusts: community land trusts, conservation land trusts, and real estate land trusts. Community land trust. The primary goal of a community land trust is to ensure that property is available for affordable housing. With this type of land trust, the trust retains ownership of the land itself, and then sells or leases the housing on the land to low-income households. Conservation land trust. Charitable organizations often create land trusts to preserve land for conservation purposes, such as protecting habitats, water quality, or scenic views, and ensuring that land is available for designated purposes, such as farming, forestry, or recreational activities. Many conservation land trusts also create educational programs, maintain recreation areas, and manage historic sites. Real estate land trust. A real estate land trust is another variety of land trust that is often used by investors and has a number of benefits. Provides privacy. Privacy is one of the primary reasons real estate land trusts are used. When it becomes known that a wealthy individual, a developer, or a well-known corporation has purchased, or is interested in purchasing, real estate, it can drive prices skyward. With a land trust, the identity of the trust owner is not made public, and a search of public records won't reveal the property owner's name. A real estate land trust allows individuals and corporations to purchase land without drawing attention. The privacy of a land trust also helps limit exposure for lawsuits, judgments, and liens. Avoids probate. A land trust allows the trustor to designate succession of ownership. The trustor can name a specific contingent beneficiary to receive title when they die, thereby avoiding the cost and delay of probate and estate taxes. Avoids transfer tax. Oftentimes, investors will transfer real estate they own into a corporation. In some states, when this is done, the transfer can trigger a transfer tax if the property transferred is encumbered by a mortgage. To avoid this, investors can create a land trust to hold title to the property and then assign the corporation as the beneficiary of the land trust. Bypasses the due on sale clause. Many mortgages incorporate a due on sale clause, which stipulates that if title to the property is transferred, the lender can call the entire mortgage balance due and payable within 30 days. Transferring a piece of property to a corporation can trigger the due on sale clause in a mortgage. However, the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982 allows consumers to place real estate in a trust without triggering the due on sale clause, as long as the borrower is the beneficiary, and occupancy rights aren't transferred. This act only applies to residential housing with 4 or fewer housing units and federally backed loans. Provides ease of conveyance. Once a property is placed in a trust, the beneficiary can be changed without the need to change the property's deed. Brokers should deal with trustee versus beneficiary regarding disposition of real estate in a land trust. How land trusts are created. Land trusts may be created at the time real estate is purchased or after it has been acquired. Under the trust, the owner, who is usually the beneficiary, directs a fiduciary, usually a professional, such as an attorney or a third-party trust company, to hold title to the real estate and provides instructions for management and control of the trust during the trustor's life and for disposition upon the trustor's death. The trustee must abide by the scope of authority outlined in the trust agreement between the trustor and the trustee. Checklist for REIT. Structured as a trust, association, or corporation. Taxable as a corporation. Owned by at least 100 people. Not an insurance company. Not a financial institution. No more than 20% invested in taxable REIT subsidiaries. Managed by a board of directors. At least 95% of income is from property income or interest dividends. Issues transferable certificates of interest or shares. During the last half of any year, no more than 50% of shares owned by 5 or fewer people, known as the 5 of 50 rule. Minimum 90% of taxable income distributed to shareholders annually, dividends. Minimum 75% of total assets invested in real estate. Minimum 75% of income from real estate investments.